TGR News, broadcasting from the State of Israel.
Welcome back to TGR News.
Hello, hello.
Rockets from Gaza, missiles from Lebanon, missiles from Syria, never-ending terrorist attacks across the country, and the largest military operation on Israeli land the IDF had done in over 20 years. This is only some of the things we'll talk about that happened this week. But first, let's say thank you. Thank you so much for everything you guys do. It is such a blessing to these wonderful people, these precious people here, the nation of Israel, these children of Israel, these Jewish kids who so desperately need this help that you're giving them every week. Every single week for over 2 years now. They've just, it's just a wonderful thing to be able to see how they're, first of all, at the beginning, they didn't know what was going on. Then as time goes on, they began to count on us showing up. And now they kind of just, it's part of life. They know we're going to show up, and the relief you see in their eyes every week that we help them, it is, it's heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. As we've always say, if you haven't been a part of this part of the ministry and you feel like you want to, there's links below all of our videos to the Patreon page or to the Support Us page, or you can just go to thegoldenreport.com and you can go to click on the Support Us page there and find whichever way it makes it easier for you. It is a wonderful witness to these precious Jews in the state of Israel, the nation of Israel. It's just such a beautiful thing to be a part of, and we thank you all so much for helping us do this. And another way you help us is by liking these videos, by sharing these videos, commenting about these videos, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the notification bell so you can keep up with all of our latest videos. So thank you so much. Let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about this week. On Saturday night, this past Saturday night, Israel carried out an airstrike against Hezbollah targets in Syria. These targets are yet again more attempts from Iran to arm our enemies and get as many weapons as possible near the Israeli border. Syria fired an anti-aircraft missile, an SA-5, which is an old but large missile with a long range. Syria says that they were trying to take down the Israeli fighters, but this missile crossed our borders and flew all the way down to the south of the country and landed in Rahat. And I say landed, not exploded. No one was hurt, but this was not the first time something like this has happened, and probably not the last. Now, I said landed, not exploded and blew up because it self-destructed before it came down and landed in Rahat. Rahat is the biggest Arab Bedouin town in the south, well, in the state of Israel, but in the south for sure. But this isn't the first time something like that's happened.
Yeah.
And not sure it's really on accident.
I'm sure it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, the IDF said they saw the missile coming and they decided not to explode it,
yes.
not to target it, because first of all they knew it's going to explode itself and
self-destruct. Yes.
Self-destruct. And so it was like they saw, they knew, and they decided not to do anything about it.
Let it go.
Yeah. After months of terrorist attacks coming out from Jenin, the IDF started Operation Home and Garden on Sunday night at 1 a.m. Over 1,000 soldiers with air support went into Jenin with the mission to arrest terrorists, confiscate weapons, and take down terrorist cell commands structures used to plan terrorist attacks. A dozen terrorists were killed, dozens were injured, and over 20 were arrested on the first night in Jenin. It has been over 20 years since the IDF went in like this to try and put a stop to terrorist attacks.
Yes. It's been over 20 years.
That's what you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
You always talked about it.
It is. It is what we needed to do, but it isn't the way we needed to do it. I've been saying what we need to do is like we did over 20 years ago, which was, it was huge bigger than what we just did this week. It was coordinated IDF soldiers in all the cities where all the terrorists are in Nablus, in Jenin, in Ramallah, in all the smaller towns and villages where we know the terrorists are hiding themselves in. And all at once we went in, the IDF did.
Yeah.
And that's what we needed to do here this time. And this week, this operation started on Sunday. We'll talk more about the information about what went on in this Operation Home and Garden, which is an appropriate name, I think. But the rest of the week will prove that it wasn't good enough.
If I'm not mistaken, the operation started with the airstrike.
Yes, from a drone, armed drone.
That's how we surprised them.
Which is new.
Yeah, if you remember last week, we told you that when we went into it was Jenin or Gaza. When we had they exploded our vehicle, IDF vehicle. Jenin. So we know now that they put all this
under the road,
underground, yeah, they hide
IEDs, these explosions.
Yes. So we decided to start with the air. They were expecting for weeks for this operation to happen.
Yeah.
They were talking about it, afraid of it. So they made many explosives.
Booby traps.
Yeah. And we decided to start with the air.
And we knew they did, and so we started it off with airstrikes by armed drones, and then we came in with D9s, big Caterpillar armored bulldozers, and just bulldozed the streets with the bombs and everything, and then our forces came in.
Yeah.
It was very successful in that aspect. Strategically, it was very successful. All the battles and everything was successful, except for the very end.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, but it just wasn't as big of an operation as it should have been. During Operation Home and Garden, a 14-year-old terrorist stabbed a Jewish man in Bnei Brak, which is a very religious area in the center part of the country. The terrorist was a child from Jenin. So sad to see this horrible brainwashing of children. The Jewish man was not killed and will make a full recovery, while the terrorist was stopped from harming anyone else. You know, a lot of people said this happened during the time of the Operation Home and Garden in Jenin. And I've heard some information, I'm not 100% sure about it, but some information that this child, his father was in Jenin, and they had actually a phone call between them, and he told him to go out and do this because the IDF was in Jenin. Yeah. So it's so sad. So sad.
Yeah. Well, if you look what they teach in the kindergartens, in their schools, how Hamas collecting them. They go to schools and they collect children and put them in special camps. Not only Hamas, also jihad, Palestinian jihad, Islamic jihad. They collect them and they take the kids and they put them through special trainings. In
terrorist training camps.
It's just kids. Let them be kids. It's so sad. Then on Tuesday, the second day of Operation Home and Garden in Jenin, a terrorist tried to kill Jews in Tel Aviv. The Arab terrorist from Hebron drove his truck into a bus station, running down the pedestrians, then climbed out of his truck and started stabbing anyone around. An armed citizen was able to shoot and stop the terrorist, but unfortunately, not before the terrorist was able to injure and hospitalize 9 people.
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's you could see this week, even during and after the Operation Home and Garden, the terrorist attacks just kept coming, and are still keep coming. Even as we talk all the time, more and more. The IDF soldiers during Operation Home and Garden had homemade bombs thrown at them, and found kids' school signs with AK-47 on them, as well as signs saying $25,000 for anyone willing to be a suicide bomber and kill Jews in Israel. On Tuesday, the IDF soldiers had what would probably be the worst battle of the mission. It was actually the last battle too. Terrorists held themselves up in the local hospital, hiding between the sick people beside their beds, and firing on the IDF soldiers, putting them in a horrible disadvantage in the battle. Well, this battle wasn't exactly where the only IDF soldier that was injured and killed, unfortunately, in this whole operation. This wasn't where he was injured and killed, but this was the worst battle of the operation. And it always is the worst battle. The last battles on the way out is always the worst battle, and the battle with the most likeliness of getting injured or killed during the battle. Reason is very simple. While you're fighting, you're facing your enemy. But in a situation like this, it's not like you're destroying the entire enemy, which I wish we could, but we can't. The world won't let us do that. And then clearing the area and everything's safe. No, that's not the situation we're under. So you have to. So when you're going in and starting the battle and starting the operation, you're facing the enemy. But at some point, the government or the world politicians who are pressuring against Israel make you stop, and you at some point you have to, which is never known before you go in. You have to stop facing your enemy and start working your way back. Of course, you're looking and trying to look both ways, as you're going. Yeah. So that's why you always at the end have more than you do during and definitely at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, this time I was surprised to see we didn't get a cold shoulder from the USA, from Biden administration this time. They actually said that they
supported this one.
They recognize Israel right to defend itself. Yeah. But of course, we got a condemnation from Jordan, from Egypt,
and UN and other places, and
Emirates.
Plus,
of course.
And plus, we know that the support we get from the U.S. is also on a time schedule. The U.S. has proven in the past that if we take too long on these operations and do too much, like we did over 20 years ago, which they had the exact same position America did, like they did this time. We support you, but we took a little too long last time because it was a much bigger operation. And then the U.S. was starting to pressure us, get out, stop, finish. And even while the U.S. is saying they support, Blinken is still saying that it's making it very hard and maybe impossible to make normalization with Saudi Arabia. So even though America is saying on one side we support it, on the other side they're saying you better stop.
Yeah.
Well, after this overdue operation in Jenin that lasted about 30 hours, the IDF was able to interrogate over 300 Arabs during this time to lead them to 30 arrests of terrorists, along with the destruction of 14 apartments used to plan and manage attacks with communications abilities. We found 6 bomb labs with over 1,000 bombs that were already made in order to make terrorist attacks in the future. Also, we confiscated large amounts of cash that were designated for terrorism. The Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the nation to say that this was an important mission that needed to be done and a serious blow to the terrorist headquarters known as Jenin, which has become a big headquarters of terrorist activity. Yeah. But this is not our last mission in Jenin.
Yeah,
that's what he said, and there's a whole. That's just a part of the list of things that they were able to do during this operation, where they were, and they found weapons and bombs in mosques, and they found. I mean, it was just an amount of guns and ammunition and everything else and all the regular stuff. It's just. It's
amazing how they desecrate their own mosque. They made in one mosque we found. First of all, the whole bottom part of the mosque was filled with heavy rocks to throw out on soldiers, of course, and fireworks and weapons. And then they have opened the floor, and you have underneath the floor not only stash, but also like a tunnel.
Tunnel system,
yeah. Tunnel system. They used to think how long they dig it and coordinate and plan all these things.
Yeah, it wasn't an overnight decision, of course. Yeah, none of it was.
This again proves that majority of people support terror because they all knew about it. Nobody came and talked about it. Nobody, they all support, they all know. And of course, after all the terrorist attacks that we talk about, they again give sweets on the streets and celebrate the death of Jews And, you know,
And Abu Mazen, the head of the Palestinian Authority, he obviously said it was bad, told Israel we can't be going into Jenin.
Doing his job.
And he decided to stop working with Israel to help security teams to stop terrorists and stuff like he ever did anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a joke because he's lost the Palestinian Authority has lost complete control in Jenin years ago. And actually, if you want to be honest about it, the only thing this does for Abu Mazen and the Palestinian Authority is sort of helps them because it weakens the radicals that had taken control over Jenin that won't they don't even go in there anymore, the Palestinian Authority, because they're so scared of that area.
Yeah.
So we actually helped him. But he had to say what he said.
Of course. Yeah. The night after the IDF left Jenin and Operation Home and Garden was over, Gaza fired 5 rockets into the surrounding areas. The Iron Dome was able to stop all the rockets from harming anyone. The Israeli Air Force immediately answered back by taking out the usual targets. What I mean by usual targets, this time we took out 2 underground rocket factories in Gaza. We should have taken out the Hamas leaders that gave the order to fire the rockets instead of taking those facilities.
We're real quick, all of us. When I say we, I mean all of us are real quick to say what politicians and everyone and everything, all the people in control, right, and the governments and making the decision makers, we're real quick to point them out on the things they didn't do right. But we also have to, if we're going to do that, we also have the responsibility to also say what they did do right. And this past operation that we had in Gaza, Shield and Arrow, the government did right, but they messed up here. But they did do that one right because so many times in the past, since that operation, that Hamas usually fired rockets in certain situations. They didn't. Time after time after time again, including all of this operation until we was completely out of Jenin and finished with the operation. And the reason is because the last time they took off, like you said, they took out the heads, the leaders who make the decisions in Gaza to fire the rockets. So it made them say, ooh, maybe we don't fire rockets every little moment, every little time we feel like it now, because when we do, one of us is going to die.
Yeah.
And that's what they should have done here again. They should have, as soon as the rockets were fired, they should have took out some leaders, And you don't even know, Israel is taking a new stance like they did last time. The last time they did it, Shield and Arrow, we did it in response of something that when Gaza fired weeks before. So maybe in a week or so, we might see it still happen. Israel might still be, because that's what happened last time.
Yeah.
It wasn't immediate.
Yeah.
It was just like this. We blew up another little factory, just like this, and then a week went by, and then boom, a drone took out the leaders. Yeah. I hope that's what they're doing.
I hope so too.
Because that would make a huge difference.
I also hope we continue to go into Jenin, into Nablus,
into
Bethlehem. Bethlehem was a peaceful city. It's not anymore. And Hebron, of course. We have to come in and take a rest, stop,
we have to do like
whatever
we did over
way
20
we
years
can
ago.
do it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, we do, and that's what we need to do. But we will still be, Israel will still be going into Jenin and everything, that's for sure. There's no way we're going to stop that. We can't afford to stop that. Mm-hmm. But we need to go in like we almost did this week, but just a little bit more and a little bit in everywhere at the same time.
You know what I like? I see a picture of terrorists group standing in front of the entrance of Jenin and saying, not even one IDF soldier will pass here.
Oh, it was a group. It was a large group. It was a photo. You're talking about a photo they took of a large group of terrorists standing that was saying no IDF soldier would stand here.
And then
during this operation, the IDF soldiers stood in the same place saying, here we are standing here.
Yeah, took a picture of them.
That was just a little stab at their ego, which is good.
Yes, and still they say they won. You know how they are.
Yeah.
They go on the streets and say, we won.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, on Wednesday, only one day after the IDF's mission, a terrorist drove by a coffee shop in the middle of the day and opened fire. This was in the Samaria area near Mount Gerizim. Thank God no one was injured, but this shows you, or shows us, that we need to continue and not stop the military missions in the Arab cities in order to get these terrorists under control. That's what I'm saying. That's what I started off saying at the beginning. You'll see as this news broadcast keeps going on that there's more and more attacks. I wouldn't even say the attacks have slowed down. If anything, they've gotten worse. It just made them more mad and to come out more, the woodwork, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying we needed this operation that we did, Home and Garden in Jenin. We need bigger and longer in all the cities at once. And then let Gaza start firing and then go in and take Gaza by ground as well. That's what we need to do and not worry about everything else. On Thursday, a terrorist opened fire in the afternoon outside a Jewish town, Ekdumim, in the Samaria area as well, killing a young man. The terrorist was shot by an armed citizen that was near the terrorist when he opened fire. Then earlier on the same day, Lebanon fired a missile into Israel, and the IDF bombed the area in answer to that from where the missile was fired from. So this was a very busy week. And if all of this fighting in Syria, Lebanon, in Jenin, in Gaza fire, if all that ain't enough, during all this, you have the left-wing people here in Israel protesting still over a half a year. This is the 27th week, consecutive week, 27th weekend or week that they have protested, and where they blocked the main highway in between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, burning bonfires and stuff, trying to stop the government from
attacking policemen too.
That's going on as well during all of this.
Yeah.
So this has been a busy week.
No shame. IDF soldiers going into Jenin, protecting you, lefties, protecting everybody, all of us,
everyone.
And you doing this protest. This is what's really important for you now. Is this I don't know. I feel that just small people.
You got anything you want to add?
Well, except all what's going on here, and we did mention all the little throwing rocks like every day. Yeah.
Didn't have time in this week.
Except this, it's beautiful weather in Israel, and I welcome you guys to come visit. But still, this is a beautiful country, beautiful state. The nature here is blooming now. It's amazing and beautiful.
Don't forget to join us at thegoldenreport.com. And until next week,
Shabbat Shalom.
God bless.